What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. Both Draymond Green and Steph Curry went off in recent post-game pressers, about how they don't want to make some sort of hyper-aggressive deal, that it would be irresponsible, essentially, to do it. And they got kind of dramatic about it. Like I can't remember whether it was Steph or Draymond, but one of them talked about like how they'd be giving up draft control for 7 years or some shit like that. Like, honestly, that's just a massive exaggeration. From what I understand, the Warriors control all of their first-round draft picks except for the 2030 first-rounder. And they have 4 second-round picks available between now and the 2030 draft. So you have 6 first-round picks in the next 7 drafts and 4 second-round picks in the next 7 drafts, from what I understand, if I'm reading the tea leaves properly. So you could include 2 first-round picks in a trade and still have 4 first-round picks between now and 2031, not even counting any first-round picks you could get in return from sending out players after you decide to rebuild. And so when I hear things like, oh, it could mortgage the next 7 years of the draft, it's like, yeah, there are occasionally star trades out there that asks for 3 first-round picks and 3 pick swaps and crazy stuff like that. But aside from like Kevin Durant, there's not really a deal like that out there. The Jimmy Butlers and the Zach LaVines and the Cam Johnsons, like that group isn't going to pull an insane haul of like 3 picks, 3 swaps. It'll mostly be about matching salary. Maybe Cam Johnson gets 2 first-round picks. Jimmy and LaVine, who knows? Like with LaVine's contract, it might be no draft compensation. With Jimmy's, it might be 1, maybe 2. Like, I don't think it's going to reach that level of expense. So frankly, the idea that the Warriors would be mortgaging their future with an aggressive trade at the deadline is just inaccurate. And like if you did do it for a guy like KD, I think he immediately vaults you into contention. Makes you bigger, makes you better defensively, he fixes your offense. That's a no-brainer. So let's just explore what a Kevin Durant deal would look like. The Suns are obviously still hemorrhaging. They lost again to the Hawks last night. So let's say things get super nasty for those Suns and they blow things up at the deadline. What would a Kevin Durant to the Warriors deal look like? It would look something like Kevin Durant, Oso Ighodaro heading to the Warriors with Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, Buddy Hield, and Gary Payton II heading back to the Suns. And again, sending out Kuminga and Wiggins, I think actually would help lessen the draft compensation issues because of their value. Like Kuminga obviously is a prospect in this league with some upside. And I think Andrew Wiggins is a good player at his salary. Like I'd take him at that number in a heartbeat as the Lakers, rooting for the Lakers, right? Like especially moving forward, like the cap is going to keep increasing by about 10% a year moving forward. Like Andrew Wiggins' deal, it's just a really good player at that number. So that might soften the draft compensation element of it. But let's say you make that deal. So again, KD and Oso Ighodaro coming back, Wiggins, Kuminga, Hield, and Gary Payton all heading out to the Suns. You'd be left with Steph Curry, Dennis Schroeder, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, Trace Jackson Davis as your starting lineup. There's a version of that where you move Trace Jackson out and you move in, take a guy like Moses Moody or a third guard and put him in the lineup. But I think they'd probably start big. And off the bench, you'd still have Kyle Anderson, Kevon Looney, Moses Moody, Brandon Podziemski, Lindy Waters, Guy Santos, and Oso Ighodaro. You have 2 guys who can play backup big minutes. You have 2 guys who can play backup forward minutes, and Kyle Anderson and Moses Moody. And you've got guards like Brandon Podziemski and Lindy Waters. Guy Santos can play some backup forward. He's been playing some decent minutes as of late. So like, you're still pretty deep. And then like, you have Dennis that can help with backup ball handling. You can stagger Steph and KD so your offense is more stable throughout the game. Kevin Durant is just still this year, some of the most impressive defensive sequences I've seen have come from Kevin Durant as he cleans up messes on that garbage Phoenix Suns team. Like KD would instantly anchor your defensive front line alongside Draymond and make you a real championship level defensive front line. And you still have plenty of perimeter defense. Dennis Schroeder can guard on the perimeter. Moses Moody can guard on the perimeter. Podziemski's not bad out there. Draymond and KD can guard on the perimeter. Plenty of length on the back line. I think that would immediately vault the Warriors into the same tier with Dallas and Denver with a real shot to win the title. And I don't want to count on Steph Curry and Kevin Durant in a big playoff series. Would you? I think if you could do that deal, you do it 10 times out of 10. Now, it's a long shot. KD might not even want it after some of the hang-ups he has after he left the Warriors. Matt Ishbia may have no desire to trade him at all whatsoever. It's a long shot, but if you can make that deal, I think you do it any day of the week. Let's talk about some smaller, more prudent moves, though. This idea of getting Cam Johnson without Jonathan Kuminga has been something that I've been intrigued with a little bit. There's different variations of it. I would also try to get Day'Ron Sharpe in the deal. You guys want a backup center. I think he's a decent option there that shouldn't cost much. So if you got Cameron Johnson and Day'Ron Sharpe, you'd have to send out something like Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, Kevon Looney, Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, Gary Payton II, something along those lines. I still think I'd want Gary Payton in my playoff rotation, so I think I'd go with like a Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, Kevon Looney type of deal. You may even decide that you prefer Looney over Day'Ron Sharpe and want to make some sort of different version of that deal, but there are versions of it where you can get Cam Johnson without including Jonathan Kuminga. I like that deal. It unquestionably makes you better. Cam is a high-level offensive player. He's shooting 43% on jump shots this year, both off the catch and off the dribble. Shooting 69% at the rim, which is excellent for a perimeter player. He's ran 158 pick and rolls, ISOs, and post-ups, including passes for 166 points. That's 1.05 points per possession. That's good self-creation. And that's with him getting the other team's best defender as of late on the perimeter. His life is going to be easier next to Steph, not just being guarded by lesser defenders, but he'll be less emphasized in the scheme. Action with Steph that could be effective. There's just so much good there offensively, and he's become a really useful defensive player at this point in his career. Most importantly, he addresses a very specific area of need in shot creation for the Warriors. I also just think he's very clearly a positive asset. He has 2 more years on his deal with, like we talked about, 10% increases in the cap. He's only 28 years old. You could make a deal for Cam Johnson and you lose in the first round this year and then turn around and trade him this summer. And immediately get whatever you sent out back for him. Wouldn't compromise your future in any way. And it would bring back a backup center in that Day'Ron Sharpe option like we talked about. Day'Ron Sharpe's been getting 16 points and 13 rebounds per 36 minutes this season. The one thing that I think would be absolutely foolish is a really tiny deal on the margin. Something like, let's just get a backup center. First of all, everybody wants them, but nobody wants to pay for them. So it's going to be a weird negotiation anyway. By the way, no one really should, as I've been talking about throughout these other segments today. And frankly, I just think trading for only a backup center would be embarrassing. It's the most 2 timelines move I've ever seen. Let's pretend to support the present while not actually giving them any capability to raise their ceiling, while still not having any real obvious future to speak of. All of these other teams, they're confronting it in different functions or different fashions because of where they're at in their development. If you have like this clear, like 2-3 years from now, we have this on the horizon, it's more complicated, right? But like for instance, when I look at Denver, you can't trade something that compromises the development of Julian Strawther or Peyton Watson when Jokic is his age and probably still going to be the best player in the world for 2 or 3 more years and a top 5 player for even longer after that, maybe even the best player in the world for longer. So like there's a real pivot that they're going to have in 1 to 2 years that they have to be super cognizant of. The Warriors, there's nothing on the horizon. Jonathan Kuminga is not leading a team to success in the Western Conference, not anytime soon. He's 5+ years out from being able to like anchor a dominant Western Conference team at best. There's no future. So like with there being no future and you being so far away in the present, pretending to support the present with some little move on the side for a backup center, I think is insulting to Steph Curry and it just the most classic representation of their strategy over the last couple of years that they've been straddling these 2 timelines. Last thing I'm going to say about the Warriors, you will not have a player like Steph for a long time, if ever again. It's rare. Even through tanking, you're not guaranteed to go get a number 1 pick who's going to be the best player in the league. Who are the best players in the league right now? Nikola Jokic, 2nd round pick. Giannis wasn't a top 10 pick. Shea wasn't a top 10 pick. Even Luka was passed on by 2 teams who didn't think he was a superstar. Like, there's a lot of luck involved in this. You happen to have Steph Curry. He's a unicorn in NBA history. When you're lucky enough to have one of those guys, you should make the most of it while you can. Any competent organization can pivot, through taking on bad money for draft compensation, drafting well, developing well, establishing a quality basketball culture that will quickly pivot you into a positive future while you wait for maybe getting one of those best guys. Trading a couple of first-round picks to support Steph Curry while he still has a fighting chance is not going to affect materially your future. That is the fact. And so even beyond anything having to do with my feelings as a basketball fan, wanting to watch Steph play in high-leverage basketball games, I would just argue that the discussion over like what you're giving up versus what you're getting in return is so heavily focused in an inaccurate way on what you're giving up. It doesn't make any sense to me. We haven't even had like an honest conversation about what these price tags look like relevant to what the Warriors' future would look like in their asset trove. Not to mention, like, anytime you decide to blow it up, it's like any quality role player you have can be moved for draft compensation to refill the trove. So I don't think they should make some small move on the margins. I think they should go for the home run swing. Because the home run swing is not 3 picks and 4 swaps. It's probably 2 picks. Maybe 1 pick and a couple second-round picks for a guy like Cam Johnson. And that guy can easily be turned around for the same return down the line. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow with a couple instant reactions. I'm also recording another trade deadline preview with Jovan Buha on the Lakers. I don't think that's going to run tomorrow. I think we're going to run it on Saturday, but we'll have that coming later this week. And then again, periodically throughout the next couple weeks, I'm going to be doing more trade deadline-centric content that you guys will see. Again, I appreciate you guys for rocking with me. I will see you tomorrow.